Good evening, everybody. Happy Sunday night. It's 11:15 on Sunday night. It's late, but it's the end of the game week, and I wanted to have a little look at my team. I thought it'd be a good chance. Oh, you don't want to see that screen, do you? I thought it'd be a good chance to talk about how I got on this week. And this is how I got on this week. If you're here, if you're about, if you are watching the video, do say hi in the chat. It's nice to have an interactive experience and hear how you've got on. It would be good to hear, what's your point score? Evening, Mark. FPL Norman Conquest, good to see you there in the chat. So I'll have a quick look at my team to kick us off, and then I'll see how you guys got on in the chat. So this is me, 68. You can see my overall rank there, 1.7 million. I am very content with that as a start to the season. And this is how I got on. So I had Ward in goal for 1 point. Didn't have huge expectations there. Was looking like it might get a clean sheet at 1 point, but obviously didn't work, but not the end of the world. Trent and Robbo double up 1 point each. That was disappointing. Cancelo and Trippier got 7 points each. Very happy with that. Neto and Bailey both flopping, but again at their price points, what do you really expect? But 2 points each, not the end of the world. It was great when Martinelli scored on Friday night. What a great start to the season with a goal there from Martinelli. Salah captain for 24 points. Jesus got me 2. And then that man, Haaland, with a 13-point haul. If you'll excuse the pun. Which, again, what a player he looks to be. We already knew that, but he has landed very quickly and is playing very well. Bench-wise, Sanchez got 4. That would have been a better pick than Ward, as it turns out, but I don't regret that. I think that's that thing of, I'll talk about more about this in a minute, but outcome versus process or decision. I feel like I made the right choice, even though Sanchez scored more points. Diaz got 6. I do think there's a question mark over whether I made the right choice there. It was a brave choice. I was very impressed with Man City in general. Again, we'll talk about that. Possibly I should have been benching one of Neto or Bailey for him. We can discuss that. Andreas and Archer, second and third subs. There was never a question for me, so 2 and 1 there. But 68 points. Very happy with that. Let's see how everyone else got on. Oh, lots of you in the chat. Whoa! What is happening? This is mad. Good to see you all here, guys. Evening Mark, evening Panda, evening Peter, Rob Pick. Banging start in Sky as well there, Rob. I also had a really good Sky start. So I scored 102, 1 less point than you. So it's going well. Evening Penguin, FPL Spartans, Darren Malloy, auto reclose, that is. Also on the same points. Nice one. Copy 3, we've not met before. Nice to meet you. 48, so bad. Went Kane over Haaland. Captain Kane, so bad. And Panda also 47. Guys, tough break. But I do think, obviously, like I've scored 20 points more than you. That is, it's a fairly decent chunk. But I feel like I've had a pretty good game week there at 1.7 million. It's not the end of the world. It wasn't one of those game weeks where loads of people scoring 80s, 90s, 100s. I feel like it's not a bad week to have a bad week, even though it's frustrating when it's at the start. So calls like going for Kane over Haaland. Anyone who watched my last stream that I did, I actually finished it with Kane in my team over Haaland, and I was umming and ahhing. I was thinking, I really think Kane's going to do better against Southampton than Haaland will against West Ham. I think it was a total 50-50 call, a real coin flip decision, and I actually fancied Kane to do better than I did Haaland, but in the end I made the decision to move to Haaland just because I didn't want to have the transfer booked in, and I was going to have that transfer booked in for Haaland. So commiserations, it's just bad luck. You've got to take it on the chin and move on, but I do feel for you guys who made that call. Like I say, I actually felt like Kane against Southampton was a better call than Haaland against West Ham. So tough break, but move on and keep going. Evening, Gary Reeser. Oh, Gary, good to see you, mate. Let's see who else we got in here. Ollie Paul. Evening, Ollie. 72 in FPL. Very good. Very strong start. And a solid start in Sky as well. So well done. Gary, points redacted. Nice. Better than 47. That's the lowest we've got so far. Sorry, Panda, to bring that up. But better than 47, Gary. And Penguin, rolling the transfer. I'm also thinking the same to roll the transfer at this stage. So mixed scores in the chat, but it feels like I haven't seen many people. Ollie's got 72. I haven't seen many people scoring more than that. It feels like this sort of fairly template team, to be honest, is getting around 60 to 70-ish. And obviously, if you didn't captain Salah or you went a different route. I've got a good friend who captained Kane. I just think, Spurs scored 4 goals. What's the chances of Kane blanking in that sort of performance? I think it's just bad luck. It really is just bad luck. We'll talk about Kane to Haaland as a move as well in a bit. Oh wow, copy 3 has already gone for Kane to Haaland. That is an early move, but at this stage of the season I can see why. Is there a price rise expected on that? One better than 47. Well done, Gary, good job. Is there a price rise expected on Haaland already? It's early to be moving, but at the same time, at this time of the season where you've got no spare cash, I can see why you'd do that. I'll talk about Kane to Haaland. I've actually made notes. So this is a new thing for me, making notes. But I thought I'd share my own team to begin with. Like I said, I'm happy. The last stream I did, the 2 changes I made from that was I moved from Kane to Haaland and I went from Perisic to Trippier. I did stream about it, but I did 2 streams, each only about 2 minutes long, just to make the changes. Both of them I had my mic muted, so those videos have gone into a secret place where no one will see them. But those are my late changes. And actually those 2 changes, to be fair, are the difference between me scoring, 13 and 7. So I've got 20 points when I would have got 3 points. So that's 17 points difference. So that would have seen me on 51. So it's very fine margins ultimately with, I think, pretty close to 50-50 calls that would have seen me on one of those lowest scores. Rise is predicted for Haaland tonight. 175,000 transfers just in the hour after the game from Rob Pick. That is, understandable, but also unbelievable. Pretty crazy. So this was my fear with picking Kane. I know it's easy to say this in hindsight. So my fear with picking Haaland over Kane was that Kane would explode, Haaland would struggle a bit more, or only get 60 minutes or 5 points, whatever, and we'd have the reverse. I thought that was much more likely that Kane would go up and Haaland might go down. As it turns out, it's gone the other way. So, spoiler, let's just go into it now. Kane versus Haaland. I do think that I think it's worth, if you're on Kane, I personally would be looking at moving to Haaland. I don't have Haaland in one of my Sky teams. I'm seriously considering him. I feel like that performance was epic. He's just the figurehead, isn't he? I'd said previously on a stream that I felt like in the Community Shield, everything was going through him. He missed some good chances, but he was in the positions, and most of the time he's going to score. I think if you're on Kane, personally, I'd move to Haaland. I think you can stick, but looking at the fixtures ahead for Haaland, let's just pop those up quickly. He's got Bournemouth next. Serious captaincy contender there. Then he's got Newcastle, which is a tricky tie, I think. And then Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest at home. He's got a really good next few fixtures. I feel like Pep's going to want him getting goals. He's not going to score 2 every game, but I do think he's a brilliant option. And I think, personally, unless you have a particular reason why you want to go for it, I think stick with that. I would not stick with it, sorry, I would go to Haaland. So I just wanted to give a few little thoughts on what's happened this game week so far and give some reflections. Seen a lot of knee-jerking on Twitter. I've seen a lot of I told you so's, a lot of people saying, oh, I knew this would happen, or the classic thing at the start of the season of like, oh, this player that I was going to pick did really, really well. And that, all the sort of stuff you might expect to see on Twitter, to be honest. But I wanted to give my thoughts and reflections on it. Spartans is saying Haaland's also on pens. I would wait until we've seen him take a pen with Mahrez on the pitch before I'd be confident. I'd say he probably is on pens, but I don't think we can say with certainty that he is. But if he is, again, how many goals could he get this season? It feels like he's going to get a return every game, doesn't it, to be honest, based on today against this pretty solid West Ham side. So I think, looking at my side, I feel like quite satisfied with the performance of my side. I know that sounds like a bit of a wishy-washy word, but actually, I said Trippier and Haaland in, that basically netted me 17 points. There's also players, though, that I missed out on. Like Zinchenko I had in my team until late on. I had Tony, I had Wilson in my team. I had players who performed who I didn't pick, but equally I brought in players like Haaland and Trippier who did. And I think whether you got a score in the 40s, 60s, 80s, I think you've just got to accept that when we make our teams, we know there's 20 or 30 players who can do really, really well. And you just have to make some very close calls and hope for the best. Like me going for Trippier versus when I've decided to sell Perisic when we got the news that he might not play. it was between Trippier, James and Zinchenko for me. Now, Zinchenko did the best out of those three. I would have been another 6 points better off if I'd picked him. But I'm not going to beat myself up over that in terms of we didn't know that was going to happen. We didn't expect it was going to happen. But at the end of the day, I've got to be happy with the Trippier 7 points. And I think when you look at your team, I like Robertson and Trent, 2 examples for me there, 1 point each. Frustrating outcome. But having 2 Liverpool defenders against Fulham, who are not the strongest team in the league, are they? They're one of the weakest teams, to be honest, or we expect them to be. I just don't think it's a bad call. And you've probably got players in your team that you might feel similarly about. And I think it's just important to be as philosophical as possible going into at the end of the first game. You've put lots of time and energy into it. And if you've struggled or if you've done well, I think it's good not to get too high when you do well, not to get too low when you struggle. Try and stay level with it. You've picked the players you've picked for a reason. And I think unless you've got sort of radically new information, I would stick to your plan, stick to your guns. The reason I said about Haaland to Kane is because I already said I felt like that Kane to Haaland move was one that I would have wanted to do anyway. It's one I would have wanted to line up if I'd have gone with Kane. And I would have been gutted now if I'd have done that move. But fortunately, I got quite lucky. A couple of people, Irons and Kaza on Twitter, sort of gave me some information and helped me make that choice. And I think you've just got to stay as level as you can, really. I try and avoid that thing of what the players that I could have had, like the Zinchenko's, the Wilsons, the Tonys. Yes, they were in my team up until a few days before the deadline, but potentially if I'd have had them, maybe I wouldn't have had Haaland. And I think you've just got to try not to work on those theoreticals too much. I'm just trying to focus on the positives. And the other thing is you can't have it all. Like I think it's a really interesting observation that I'm sort of doing on myself of how I felt after the games on Friday versus how I felt after the games on Saturday versus how I felt after the games on Sunday. So when we look at this fixture list down here, after Friday night I was thinking, I should have picked Zinchenko. I put Jesus in my team and I thought he'd played pretty well actually. I thought Arsenal in general I was very impressed with. But after Friday night I was thinking, maybe Zinchenko was the pick. Maybe I should look to bring Zinchenko in. Then after Saturday, Liverpool obviously floundered a bit. Spurs scored 4 goals. Okay, Son and Kane weren't super in it, but I was really beginning to think maybe I really need to seriously think about looking at getting one of Son or Kane in for their favourable run from game week 3. And equally, Reece James did very well, and I was thinking, okay, he's important. It's that thing of like Friday was all about Zinchenko, Saturday was all about Spurs assets, and what do I do with Liverpool and Núñez and Reece James, and then today, now Sunday, everyone's thinking, Haaland. And I think we've got so little to work with so far in the season. We've got 1 game week's worth of information, and I think it's easy to sort of be sitting here on a Sunday night, panicking about our teams, worrying about decisions we've made, kicking ourselves maybe, or really like coveting certain players, or just imagining that we can this perfect team, and if we scrapped our team and started again, then it would just be just right. But then we'd have the same thing next week, and we'd have the same sort of questions, and we'd have the same sort of challenges, and we'd have other players disappointing us. So players that went off really well this week might struggle next week. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. Like I saw Late Riser, who I really, really like on Twitter, he put something about wildcarding, and I just felt like, and he did acknowledge like he was a bit panicked, but it's that thing of like, it was Sunday morning, like we don't need to panic ourselves into wildcarding at this stage, in my opinion. Like, yes, you can create a team that's brilliant based on what's happened in game week 1, but we've picked the players we have for a reason, like Bailey and Neto, 2 prime examples. We picked them for a reason. They're cheap assets. You've got to set your expectations at the right level. Even for a Trent and a Robbo, we don't expect them to keep clean sheets every week. Sort of every other week average is what we're hoping for them. We don't need to panic because they had 1 bad game. We know they're good assets. So that's basically the thing. And however you're feeling tonight, I would just encourage you to try and be as level as possible. If it's a low week, just take the hit and keep moving. And if it's a good week, enjoy it, but stay focused and try and stay as level as you can. So that's my thoughts on the game week so far. So let's see if there's anything in the chat. Yeah, exactly. You can't have them all. Spartan says, remember Ian Powering's mantra, pick attacking players from good attacking teams, defensive players from good defensive teams. Exactly. I really think fantasy football, and especially FPL, is ultimately a very simple game, and we can complicate it. And I think right now, at this point in the season, it's just important to keep ourselves as level as possible. Good to see Tyler as well, by the way. Welcome. And Big Geek and Bailey as well. Good to have you, and thanks for popping in the chat. Yeah, it's a good time of the season to be as level as possible. So With that said, I think I'll do a quick rundown of the game week. Just game by game, just sort of my observations, my thoughts. If you've got anything, I'm going to go through them match by match based on this list that you can see here in front of you. I'm just going to do literally probably 30 seconds on each game. Anything that I think is fantasy relevant. Any players that I think stood out as worthy of consideration. So Crystal Palace 2, Arsenal 0. Obviously Martinelli did really well. I think he's a fantastic pick at 6 million. I think if you don't have him, I think he's one that I really think you should seriously consider looking at. And if you are looking to jump away from a Bailey or a Neto, he's a small upgrade upwards. I think he's a fantastic asset. Again, Saka and Zinchenko, I thought they both played really well. I thought Jesus was great. I don't think there's any reason to panic on Jesus. He's got a good run of fixtures. He's a good price. I didn't see any reason to worry. On Zinchenko, obviously he got a really good haul in that game. I think Arsenal were perhaps slightly lucky to get a clean sheet. I thought they gave away some decent chances to Palace, and I think a better attack might have punished them. That said, it's that classic Arteta thing where they sit off when they're ahead, and I think they do invite pressure sometimes. So I think Zinchenko is a great asset at 5 million, but I'm happy with Trippier, and I'm not going to panic my way to Zinchenko in the short term. Saka versus Jesus, again, talked to Andy Martin about this FPL tactician on the stream via the chat, and he felt like Saka was a better shout than Jesus. I wasn't sure, I wasn't convinced to be honest, but he's outscored him, and I think those two look like fairly even assets. I think Martinelli is the one for me from that one. Fulham 2, Liverpool 2, obviously a surprising result. I guess the big talking point from a fantasy point of view, well, a couple of things. One is Darwin Núñez, looking like a really good asset. I still feel like he's a player who I'm not going to jump on. £9 million, it's a really attractive price, but I want to see him starting consistently. We don't know how Klopp's can use him and Firmino when they get to Champions League in a few weeks. I don't want to bring him in a tricky price point where he's above the likes of Jesus, Tony, that bunch, and Wilson, but he's below the premiums and even the likes of Vardy as well. I think he's at a tricky price point. Personally, I don't want to reshuffle my 3 Liverpool to bring him in, only for him to start getting rested in a few weeks' time. So I think I still think he's a wait and watch. I think Diaz played really well. I cannot believe Salah got awarded the assist, by the way, and I'm a Salah captain now. I couldn't believe Salah got awarded the assist. Did anyone think that was assist? It looked to me like a clear own goal. But I feel like Salah, obviously, this is the thing, he plays badly in that game, but he comes away with a goal and assist, and that is the joy of Salah, and that's why we've got him, right? And I don't see any reason to move away from him if you've got him. What I would also say, though, is if you don't own him, despite the fact he jammed his way into a goal and assist, I personally think that if I was a Salah non-owner, despite the outcome, it's that thing of process versus outcome, the process of the choice that, like, potentially Núñez, potentially Diaz can keep up with him. I think that game actually did prove that. I thought Diaz was unlucky. If anything, you look at that performance and I'd suggest that probably Diaz was the one who was more likely to come away with more returns. So if I was on Diaz, Robbo, Trent, or if I was on Darwin, Diaz and a defender, I feel perfectly comfortable with that right now. I think I'm on Salah, Trent, Robbo. I see no reason to move off that at the moment. Obviously, it was a poor performance, and you've just got to take those on the chin sometimes and accept it happens. I will be keeping an eye on Liverpool at the back, and just making sure that they tighten up a little. But they've got a great run of fixtures to do that, and I'm not too concerned. From a Fulham perspective, Mitrovic was obviously excellent, and I've had him before in previous fantasy seasons. I've started with him. I've always backed him to do well in the Premier League. This season I felt like being burned a couple of times before. I'm just going to give him a wide berth. He obviously scored a couple of goals in a game we didn't expect him to. Fulham's fixture run, let's have a little look here. Fulham's fixture run is quite favourable, isn't it? I mean, well, favourable-ish. I mean, Wolves are a fairly tight defence. Brentford aren't bad at the back. Arsenal are good. Actually, I say it's good. I actually don't really fancy that run from an attacker's perspective. So once we get to game week 8, Forest away is not bad. Newcastle at home I don't love. Once we get to game week 11, I think that then I might sort of consider him. But I think for me personally, looking at those fixtures, I think he'll probably score 4 or 5 goals in that run, which is for 6 million or 6.5 million is fine. I don't think I'm going to be again shuffling up my team to get him in that run. Andreas Pereira I thought was excellent for 4.5. Looks like absolutely fantastic 4.5 option. I think you could start him if you wanted to. Sometimes I feel very happy to have him, and if I was wildcarding this week, which I'm not, then I think 4.5 would be he'd be nailed on for me. Let's have a look. Jonathan Walker 68, yep, same here, mate, very good, and happy to have traded Kane for Haaland. Yeah, fair enough, I think that's fair. Dave, what do you think happens? This is from Spartans. Dave, what do you think happens in the Liverpool attacking dynamic when Jota is back? Read Diaz, Nunez. I think Salah's obviously the main man. I'm assuming that he's going to play every single game. And then we've got Diaz, Nunez, Firmino and Jota. And I would suggest in my mind that basically Jota and Diaz are tussling for a spot. Nunez and Firmino are tussling for a spot. They've got a lot of games to come in the Champions League. I think that Klopp tended to have a favoured front three last season, which was basically Mane, Salah, and then quite often it was Jota. When Diaz arrived, he sort of muscled his way into that front three, so that it became Salah, Mane, Diaz. I think Klopp likes a favoured front three that he generally sticks with, and I think that probably, this is my guess, is that we'll see Diaz, Nunez, Salah as the front three, based on what we've seen so far. But I want to see how. I think it's unknown, and I don't know if you've got any thoughts on it yourself, Spartans, or if anyone else does, but I think Nunez and Firmino are centre forwards. They're not players who are probably going to play out wide. So I think that Jota and Diaz are pretty much going to be vying for one spot. And again, that's a favour for Salah. I think Nunez he looks such a better player than Firmino. They just look so much more dangerous. He offers such a different thing. And I rate Firmino, but I think, yeah. So that's how I see that working out. But I just want to be cautious with that. I think Nunez and Diaz are fine picks, but you just got to know they are going to get shuffled sometimes, aren't they? AD saying nothing was surprising this week apart from the results. That's quite a big thing then. Jonathan, I'll talk about Bailey and Neto. I guess long story short, no, I wouldn't personally look at trading them out, but I will talk to them when I get to those matches. I think they're perfectly fine holds. So that's Fulham, Liverpool. Rattle through some of these fixtures a bit quicker because they're less relevant. So Bournemouth 2, Villa 0. I'd tip Bournemouth to come easy bottom 3. Really surprised by this result, even though I'm very pleased by it as someone who is from near Bournemouth and has seen a lot of Bournemouth games and used to be a Bournemouth season ticket holder and etc. etc. So happy with the win, but surprised. I guess from a fantasy perspective, I think Leon Bailey's the big one at 5 million. I've got Leon Bailey. Apparently he played quite well. Apparently he was quite dangerous. In a terrible Villa performance, he did okay. I think he'll keep his place for the next game. Whether I start him or not, I'm yet to decide on. He is definitely at risk. I think they've got Everton at home next. We'll have a look in a minute. I think they've got Everton at home next, which is a fantastic fixture to bounce back in. I'm not worried about Bailey individually at 5 million. I think at that price, he's almost a 4.5 mid, basically. You've got to expect like one return every 4 weeks is fine. That's okay. And we're not buying people like Bailey and Neto to score every week. We're buying them to get any return, like an assist, once every 3 or 4 weeks, basically. So I think we can chill out on those guys. He had a great pre-season. He's got his place in the team. It looks like he played the whole 90 minutes. He didn't get subbed when players like, I think Coutinho got subbed. I think Ings got subbed. Like, big players got subbed and he stayed on the pitch. I think that's a good sign. Don't think you need to panic. Villa defenders, again, they've got Everton next. If you've bought Cash or someone like that, I think you just sit with them, give them another week, see how they look. If they struggle against Everton, then I'd be starting to worry, not so much about Bailey and Cash as individuals, but I'd be worried about Villa as a team. And I think at that point, I'd be considering for game week 3 whether I do or not. And I should say, I think it's worth rolling if you possibly can this week, just to get more information and see what's happening. If you're on the Kane to Haaland thing, I get it. That's a move I'd do as well. But if you don't have to and you can avoid it, I would roll that transfer. Yeah, let's have a look. Just looking at the comments, I will make sure we cover it when we get to the game. Ollie Paul, yeah, he's saying that Nunez has twice shown what he can do with limited minutes, and I think he'll be first choice soon. I agree. I think Nunez will be first choice soon, but I want to see him be first choice for a couple of games in a row, see how he gets on from the start. Obviously, he's a very explosive player coming on against tired legs. I want to see how he gets on from the start against fresh defences, when he has to do a bit more of the build-up play. Let's see how it goes. I don't think Liverpool were throwing everything at them at that point in the game, and I think he benefited from that, didn't he? Yeah, Bailey points out exactly right. So Bailey and Neto, they are there to get points, yes, but they're facilitators. Those players are all about what they allow in the rest of your team. So I just maybe another player emerges, and in fact, it's a nice in terms of another player emerges. That brings us on to Leeds versus Wolves, where I think Rodrigo at 6 million had a great pre-season. He's got straight into scoring goals. Obviously, historically, very good player, expensive signing for Leeds, Spain international. Very talented, has underperformed at Leeds so far, but could this be the season where Rodrigo steps forward? Maybe Jesse Marsch is going to get the best out of him. As again, 6 million mid. I think he's 6 million. 6 million mid. He's got his goal. I think he's one to keep an eye on personally. I think he's at a good price point in a team that very heavily, it relies on Brentford, but it needs other players to score goals more. Jesse Marsch has talked about that. I think Rodrigo could be an option. Also worth highlighting is Aronson, the new midfielder, the American midfielder at 5.5. He's another one where if you've got panicky and you want to move someone on, you could look at moving on to Aronson. I just think he's another one just to keep our eyes on. Christensen, the fullback, also apparently played very well. And I also think it's worth highlighting Bamford was back. Bamford there, he played 83 minutes, which is very encouraging. He got an assist, he could have scored. I think he's another one just to keep an eye on. That 7.5 striker price point with Wilson, Tony, those sorts of players, I think is a position that I would like to have in my team this season. Wolves, we talked about Neto. Apparently he played very well. Saw some sick skill that he did on YouTube, which is nice. Me and my friends call that football porn, when a player basically does all these amazing skills that just end up on YouTube, but doesn't have to be end product, just has to be skills. But he produced some great football porn moments. But apparently he was playing very well and looked dangerous. Pedent's got the goal. I'm not really interested in any other Wolves assets right now, apart from Neto. One feels like enough. In a few weeks it might feel like too much. But right now I'm happy to stick with Neto. Again, I remember when I bought him, his fixtures were decent. He's got Fulham next. I'm happy to bench him against Tottenham. I think that Newcastle game's tricky, but then he's got Bournemouth and Southampton 5 and 6. At 5.5, I'm happy to play him game week 1, game week 2, game week 5, game week 6. And then probably that's going to be a sell at that point, or at least a perma bench for that little run from 7 to 10. So I'm quite happy to stick with Neto for now. Not panicked at all on him. Hopefully you're not too. Newcastle Forest, pretty routine win for Newcastle. Oh, sorry, just check the questions. Yeah, Cameron Wright, good point. Happens every season. The cheap enabler will emerge. There's no point in knee-jerking. Aronson, Rodrigo, McNeil, Dewsbury Hall, etc. Wait and see. Gain information early days. Fantastic advice there, Cameron. Totally agree with that. And I'm with you. Just worth waiting to see. Newcastle 2, Nottingham Forest 0. Routine win. Happy to have Trippier. He got his bonus point as well. Surprising that Wilson didn't get any bonus. But I think Callum Wilson was the one on Saturday. Well, there's a few, but Wilson was one who I had in my team throughout all pre-season from the very first day, and I lost him at the end. Now, I did get Haaland as part of that, so I'll take it. But Wilson's one where I was sort of kicking myself, he's just such a reliable player. As long as he's fit, and you can sell him when he's not for Bamford or Tony or whoever, he's a great pick. I think they've now got good fixtures in 2 and 4, tricky ones against Liverpool and City in 3 and 5, so I don't think he's a buy at the moment. But he's definitely one for me. That run from game week 6 to 10, Callum Wilson, I would be shocked if Callum Wilson is not in my team for game week 6. I want him. And even there, you look Man United and Everton 11 and 12. I feel like that is a fantastic run of fixtures. He is a great option. And but routine win for Newcastle, I think there's going to be lots of good assets from there this season. Nico Williams looked very good actually at right back. I thought he did make some mistakes, but in terms of as a FPL asset, I thought he looked very good. He was on set pieces, corners, free kicks. I think if you've got him as he's the standout 4.0, I think. Let's have a look. Copy, I'll come to your question. Spurs 4, Southampton 1. Again, like I said, Saturday night I was thinking, oh man, I need Spurs players. I didn't go for Kane, and I felt like I got away with it by not going for Kane and picking Haaland. And I felt like that Saturday night before Haaland had even played, I felt like I got away with it. I know Kane could and probably should have scored. I also noticed that he really should have been set up. And actually, same for Callum Wilson. I noticed on Match of the Day, a couple of times he had an open goal. The player just needed to cross it. St. Maximum once. There was someone else, can't remember who. Just needed to tap it across goal. Wilson was there ready for the tap in. I know Eddie Howe loves that sort of thing. I'm sure Howe will be saying to him, get that ball across the goal so he can tap it in. That's what he's there for. And And it was the same with Kane. Son and Kane actually, who usually link up great. There was a couple of moments where they didn't pass. Presume that everything's okay there, but it was odd. It was odd. I wouldn't expect to see it from them. But like I said, felt like I got away with it. I feel like the Perisic, who I was very keen on, I feel like the wing-back situation is muddied now with 2 great performances from Emerson and Sessegnon. So I am feeling like quite happy just to sit back and see what happens with the Spurs wing-backs now. Despite their great run of fixtures, they've got Chelsea this week, but I think even when we get to game week 3, I don't feel confident enough to jump in yet on Spurs wing-backs. Kulusevski was someone who was on my watch list before the start of the season. He obviously did great. Again, he was in my team up until about 3 or 4 days to go. I decided against him quite firmly in the end, so I didn't feel too much regret. But he played fantastically well. He looks crucial to how they play. I wouldn't be too worried about his minutes. I think at 8 million he's a good option. But again, I'm not going to panic. There's lots of good 8 million options, and I think he is obviously one of them. Son and Kane, I've talked about Kane to Haaland, so I won't go over that again. I still think they're both good options, and I wouldn't be panicking. If you decide to keep them, you've picked them for good reason. They're going to be good fantasy assets. Spurs had a good result against a fairly weak Southampton team. I don't think there's any need to sell, and I actually think Son, once we get to game week 3 to 6, that's a fantastic run for him. I think he's a great pick. I think you could make a case from going from over Salah and going for like a Son and a Salah instead of going for Son and Diaz instead of something like Salah and Rashford or whatever, whoever you might have in your team. But I think for now they've got Chelsea this week. I'm just happy to see how they perform game week 2. But interestingly, and I felt like Spurs were going to have a great season. I still think they're going to have a great season. Southampton, sadly, don't touch them. Interestingly, Spartans is saying he thinks target Nottingham Forest as the whipping boys. I thought they were appalling and completely overrun by Newcastle. I think, possibly, I think one thing is we've got to be aware of, it's one game. Like when we look at that fixture list as a whole, you could say target Southampton, but they're playing against a really strong Spurs team. I think Newcastle are just underrated. I think Eddie Howe's an awesome manager. I think Newcastle got a really good team that he's got playing really well in a really difficult atmosphere. Nottingham Forest are going to take 2 or 3 weeks to bed together, probably a lot of new players. Personally, I don't see anyone yet who has emerged as a team to target, personally. So that's just my take on it. I think right now I want to focus on the teams that are doing well as opposed to the whipping boys to target against, if that makes sense. So for me, I'm looking at Spurs have started well, okay, against a weaker team, but Newcastle also, they looked slick and were performing very well, made life difficult for the opposition. So I would say Newcastle, Spurs, Man City, those are the 3 teams I think this week have stood out as being playing really well, who you would expect to bring forward. So I think those will be the teams that I would be feeling like confident to look towards myself. Again, Cameron, I'll answer your question in a second. It's an interesting one, so I will come to it once I've rattled through these. Chelsea 1, Everton 0. Everton, I'm not interested in any Everton players at all. Gordon, I'd said I thought could be decent at 5.5. Still think he could be, but again, I haven't started with him. I'm not going to waste a transfer on bringing in someone like Gordon and fiddling around with a player like that. Chilwell started. That was quite surprising. He got his assist from winning the penalty. Cucurella came on. I thought... he nearly got an assist, didn't he? He came on and he set up that big chance for Sterling, who I thought looked bright. Reece James played really well at right wing back. And again, the reason I didn't pick James was because I was concerned he played right centre back as opposed to right wing back. Reece James is extremely high up my list. If he's playing right wing back, I feel like at 6 million he's a total bargain. So he is someone who I really like the look of. But in my lineup, I've got 4 plus Diaz there, 5 players who I think are all great options. And I feel like Chelsea, who have they got next week? They've got Spurs, haven't they? So yeah, they've got a tricky fixture next. So again, I'm happy to wait a week on that one. But Reece James is going to be a strong consideration for me for game week 3. But I'll have to think about how I do that and what moves I want to marry up with that. But I thought Chelsea were basically fairly average against a very poor Everton team. And I'm not too excited by anyone apart from arguably the wing backs, but certainly James. I think Sterling's a decent option, but again, I think they're going to lose against Spurs, so I won't be moving on Chelsea players yet. Something seems just a bit off at Chelsea at the moment, I think. Yeah, Darren Malloy, Liverpool are the whipping boys. Yeah, mate. More like Man United, yeah? Seriously. Leicester 2, Brentford 2. I haven't seen anything from this game. I did follow it just on my phone, text and that. Dewsbury Hall got a lovely goal apparently. He's only 5 million, so again, he could emerge. Cameron was saying it, one of the names, he could emerge. I think he played in a somewhat attacking role. I think Maddison's another great 8 million option along... I should touch on 8 million, as I say, but alongside the likes of Mount, Kulusevski, there's a Foden, there's a whole bunch of them. I think Maddison's just as good as them. I honestly think there's a cigarette paper between them and you just got to toss a coin and go for it at this stage of the season. But I think Maddison's great. Tony, again, player who I backed to do well. It's not exactly like miracle calling that, is it? But in that 4-3-3, that's what they played again. Everything points towards Tony. They got 2 goals. And people worried about would they perform without Eriksen. I think, Tony's going to score goals. He's going to get 15. I think he's going to be not necessarily great value, but I think he's going to be fine value. And I'm sure he'll be on my team at some point this season. He's in one of my Sky teams. I'm very happy with that. Obviously, a lot of people like myself, I was on Ward or Everson. Some people are on. I do feel like I didn't go for the 2 4.0s. I just think Leicester's defence is so dodgy. I'm questioning, so I've got the Ward and Sanchez rotation. I'm questioning whether I just start Sanchez actually. Brighton showed today what a good team they are, what a great coach they have. Potter's so much better than Rodgers. Now that game week 3 fixture he's got there at home Southampton for Ward, that is one where I might, but I'm thinking outside of that, I think I'm just going to bench him. There's no fixtures there that I particularly like, and when I've got Sanchez in comparison, I feel like pretty much all of those, I think I'm just going to start Sanchez over Ward, apart from possibly game week 3 when he's away at West Ham. Although even that, you've got to say, like, Brighton's superior defence could win out against Leicester's. So personally, I basically will be benching Ward from now on. And if I had the 2 4.0s, I would be a little bit concerned, to be honest. But again, you're doing that to save money elsewhere. I question whether that's worth it. But do you want to be spending a transfer on a goalkeeper? Arguably not. I think it can be worthwhile, to be honest. So I personally wouldn't hesitate if I felt like there was a strong option to bring in. But it depends when you're playing on wildcarding, sooner or down the line. I'm not excited about Leicester defence. I think they're going to have a struggly season defensively. Spartan says Rodgers subbed KDH for Daka. Leicester fell apart and Brentford then outplayed them. That's interesting. I'm assuming KDH is okay. But yeah, he's a 5 million. I think he could be an interesting one, but he's not someone I feel excited about. Again, not loads of assets in those teams. There's no point spending too long on them. AD Tour saying Rodgers first managed to get sacked. It's definitely possible. I feel like something's up at Chelsea. I think there is something up at Chelsea in dressing room, back behind the scenes. I think there's something up at Leicester as well. And they could well lose Fofana by the looks of it. And Fofana, I just rate him so highly. I don't know if they'll be able to spend that money or what. I think if they lose Fofana, that is really risky for them, I think. Man United 1, Brighton 2. Oof. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't shocked at all, to be honest. It's very pleasing, obviously, as a Brighton local, for Brighton to win that game. But we don't know much about Ten Hag. Obviously, we know what he did at Ajax, but we don't know much how that's going to translate. And this, by all accounts, was not a good performance, to say the least. And Brighton beat them. So I'm not really very interested in any Brighton players, to be honest with you, because Potter rotates. The fixtures aren't amazing. I don't really like the price points they're at. So I'm not really interested in Brighton players. And I'm also not really interested in Man United players. So Rashford was another one who I considered at 6.5. I think at the moment, don't pick Man United players. Simple as that. And if I had them, I would also consider selling them. I think you've got to give them another game or two, but they would definitely be on my of concern list. AD saying Brighton played fantastic. Yeah, that's what I've heard. I didn't watch it, but again, I followed that game much more closely. And everyone who I spoke to on Twitter or in other places have said Brighton's played great. And Potter's just such a good coach. He really is. I watched quite a lot of the fans forum, and he spoke so impressively. And I feel like he's going to be a top manager, as in he's going to get to a top club sooner rather than later. Like when Conte leaves Spurs, probably would be my guess. But if not there, then maybe at Man United. But I think he's going right to the top, and I think he really reminds me of Eddie Howe a lot in lots of different ways, like the Ostersund's Bournemouth thing of like taking Ostersund through the league, just like Eddie Howe took Bournemouth through the leagues. Emotionally intelligent, tactically switched on, seems like a good person all round. Bailey's saying Man United's team target, that's what I said as well. I do think, their confidence is so fragile, those players, and things could turn sour quickly for Ten Hag, but surely the club have got to back him. Surely they've got to go with it and just give him the opportunity to turn it around. But yeah, this is FPL, so let's focus in on FPL. Don't pick their players, basically. Final game of the game week is Man City West Ham. 2-0 win. Obviously, Haaland grabs the headlines. He looks, I don't like the word essential, but he looks close to essential, I think. Fantastic performance. A player spearheading that attack. I mean, if he stays fit, there's no... I watched it with a friend and my son, and we were saying, there's really no reason to think, could this be the season that the player gets 50 attacking returns like Messi used to do at Barca and like Ronaldo used to do at Real Madrid. You've got the best team in the league, in my opinion, putting pretty much all their resources into this one focal point of the attack. You've got a player like Kevin De Bruyne putting through balls through like he did for that second goal. He is the spearhead of the best team in the league, and I think he is very, very hard to overlook. We talked about Kane to Haaland. I think it's a move I do, for sure. It was a move that I was going to line up if I had Kane. I just think he looks excellent. I think De Bruyne is another one who I think will benefit from him being in the team. The space he creates by running in behind defences, it creates space for De Bruyne to run into. Obviously gives him a target for his passes. He only ended up with an assist today, De Bruyne, but he could easily end up with more in other games, I think. And he had a couple of shots, I think, and could have got more. Pretty hilarious. I've just seen that Ederson got a bonus point. That is pretty unbelievable. But there we go. Someone talked about Foden. So I'm just going to make a quick couple of notes because there's some questions I don't want to miss. I'll go through them in a minute. Foden, someone talked about. I think, again, Foden's one. I've got 3 City. I've got Diaz, Cancelo and Haaland. Cancelo and Haaland will be staying in my team now. Haaland was one I thought, maybe I'll keep him, maybe I'll move him. He's staying. Cancelo staying. Diaz is one where I feel like maybe I could move him to like a James and look at maybe trying to bring in a Foden midfield. Someone further up, sorry I've forgotten who, did ask about Foden. It was Mungo Russell. Said Mount/Kulu decisions. Foden worth the free transfer this week or hold? Without Haaland this week, Captain Cancelo. Wow, okay, we'll talk about that. No, I wouldn't Captain Cancelo over Salah. I don't think that's worthwhile as a punt. But let's talk about Foden to begin with. We'll talk about Game Week 2 captaincy in a minute. I'm going to make some notes so I don't forget. But Mount versus Kulu. So I would say Kulu I would not sell. I would not sell either of them, Mount or Kulu. Like, people panicking on this Chelsea match. I just think, okay, Mount didn't play great, but he had a shot block from the edge of the box that you could just tell from his reaction when the shot was blocked. He felt it was going in. And Mount, again, he's 8 million. At 8 million, I think we're looking for something more like, on average, a return, goal or assist every other week. That's okay. That would be at the end of the season, say 10 goals, 10 assists. That would be perfectly fine at that price point. It would probably be quite good. I just don't think there's any need to panic. He's going to play every game. He's pretty much the main man in their midfield. He's been their player of the season last couple of seasons. I think he's a great asset. You could just chill out on it. Same with Kulusevski. You can use your transfer better, I think. Okay, Foden's playing Bournemouth. A, will he definitely start? Well, he probably will, but he won't definitely start. And B, okay, Mount and Kulusevski have got a tricky-ish game, but then they've got a good run of games. And I just think, get the information, take your time, Mungo, and see what happens this week. Foden, he could score a goal against Bournemouth, but actually, Mount and Kulusevski could also score. And I just think it's worth just taking your time. If you've got Maddison, any of those 8 million mids, pretty much, I would just hold fire for now on those. I'm going to take on some of the other questions quickly that were more sort of broader. There's a few interesting ones in there. So, Copy says, would you say this early in the season FPL can be more luck-based? I think FPL is always very luck-based, to be honest with you. It's that thing of like, you pick a certain amount of players and from a certain amount of players, and you just got to hope they perform. I picked Trippier over Zinchenko, over James. They all scored slightly different points, or Trippier and James scored the same perhaps, but Zinchenko outscored them. But I think it was a 50-50 call, and I think there's a lot of luck in that. And On another game week, Trippier gets an assist and Zinchenko doesn't. I think the difference is it's not more luck based in game week 1. It's just that you haven't had the chance for things to even out a little bit. Not that they necessarily will, but you haven't had a chance to have a week where Trippier gets an assist and Zinchenko doesn't, and a week where James scores and Trippier gets sent off, and all that stuff. Sort of over a season, you get all this sort of fluctuation, but actually, it doesn't always average out. It doesn't work that way. But actually, you tend to get some good weeks and some bad weeks, and I think so far you've just had one, and that's why I think it can feel more lucky in game week 1. And then there was another question, which is another good one. So Cameron Wright. Cameron, I don't know if you follow me on Twitter or if I follow you, but if you let me know your Twitter handle, because I want to follow you, because you're asking good questions and making good points. So has Game Week 1 changed your opinion that there's only 40 odd viable options and that the game will be flat this year due to pricing, or too early to tell? I still think that the pricing's poor, to be honest. Like, I compare it to Sky. I won't talk about Sky yet, but I still think the pricing is poor. I still think the game's going to be flat. I noticed Mark Southerns, legend of the game, basically saying a similar thing, that he's worried that basically people are just going to be going on sort of roughly on the same path, not much variance. We might have a different 6 million mid, was his comment. It is too early to tell in terms of will that definitely happen, but I think there's enough flatness in it for me that I think it's a risk. Like when I look at this, when I look at my team, let's just go to the transfer screen quickly. Basically, Jesus is already owned by 73% of the game. Haaland is on his way to becoming a template. So he's at 50%, but we're saying he's getting transferred in very, very, very quickly at the moment. He's going to go up, and he's going to get to probably at least 60, but close to 70 maybe, perhaps by the deadline. Salah is at 62%. He's going to be very, very popular. A Liverpool defender, Trent's going to be very popular. It's just, for me, this is bad for the game. When you've got players like 45%, 58%, I think it's going to get tempted. I think a player like Reece James, potentially, if he takes off. So I personally, yes, I do think the game's going to be more flat this season. I think it's going to be harder to get an edge, and I think maybe we have to play it a bit differently. Maybe we have to try and go a bit earlier on players than we would normally to try and make a jump. If you want to do that attritional thing of just week by week by week dragging through, you can do that. But I think it's quite fun to see if you can do something different. So I like having 2 Man City defence. I like having 2 Liverpool defence. It gives you that chance to make a jump on someone who's got Trent and Cancelo. It's like, I'm doing something a bit different to most of them. Again, Trippier, what's his ownership? 20% is pretty high, but let's see how it goes. I'm not writing it off at all. I don't feel that way about it. But like I say, to go back to Sky, the pricing's so much harder. The players are much more varied. There's many more players spread across the team, and when you put those 2 games side by side, it's much more interesting, because in Sky you've got, I don't know, like, I'm in a group chat with a bunch of guys. The teams there's some players who are very similar, but there's a whole bunch of different enablers that people have got. There's just different decisions to make. So yeah, wow. Mark Daniels, Jesus has 732,000 transfers out. See, I'm not concerned. Again, as a Jesus owner, I thought he played well. He could have scored. He looked bright and lively. He's got a fantastic Leicester, terrible defence. Bournemouth, I think, are going to struggle this season personally. I still think Fulham are going to struggle as well. They've got Tim Ream at centre-back, for goodness sake, and they've just signed Shane Duffy. I mean, they're not going to stop Gabriel Jesus. Villa had a poor first game. We don't know what that's going to be like. Man United, I don't trust to keep him out. Everton's a great game. I just think he's not a sell for me. If, like, him and Martinelli, keeping them both, if he drops in price by 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, I'm just going to stick with him. I mean, if you get him at 7.7, well done, you've done well, but I see no reason to sell him at the moment. Cameron, give me a follow. Mungo says, cheers for the advice, I'll chill out on it. I don't mean like, chill out, mate. But you know what I'm saying? It's that thing of like, it's easy to get wrapped up in like, oh man, have I got the right one? We don't know yet, and I just think that they're all good options. I do think Foden might emerge, to be fair, as the standout, but I want to see, will Mahrez play some games? Surely Mahrez has got to start some games in the coming weeks. He can't just start no games in 4 weeks and then go into Champions League and stuff. Will Alvarez play some games? I think let's just see what happens there. That's my worry with Foden. That's why I didn't pick him from the start, because I felt like if I knew he was going to start, I would have probably picked him over Diaz as my third Man City, but he's one to keep an eye on. I'll come to the question in the chat. There's a couple of other interesting ones got dropped in further up that I just want to make sure I don't miss. Let's just have a quick check of what those were. We've done the luck-based one. Yes. So, Gary reads it. Haaland or KDB the better captain next week, in your opinion? Will Bournemouth likely sitting a bit deeper change anything compared to today? For me, it's Haaland. I don't think... before the season started, I was quite ambivalent about Haaland versus KDB as equivalent options. I think seeing them today did make me think... I like I said about the space that KDB will get and the extra point for the goal and the fact that he's going to be making lots of assists for Haaland and he gets the clean sheet points. I still think KDB is a great option. But given the situation right with Salah, Son, Kane, Haaland, I find it hard to justify having both those two players personally when there's other great Man City assets like the two I've got at the back, like Foden. Ake's one to watch as well. But I think it's got to be Haaland. I think Bournemouth, I know they beat Villa 2-0 and Parker can set up a team defensively potentially. Like I said, I've got a real genuine bias towards Bournemouth because I've got a personal connection with them. But I just think they are trash. And I think they were lucky to get promoted from the Championship, to be honest. And I think that Man City will absolutely rip them to shreds next week. And I think Haaland particularly will. So for me, it's Haaland. May as well talk about Game Week 2 captaincy now. I think Salah and Haaland is close call. I can see the argument for them both. I think it's close to a coin flip. That said, this is how I work in fantasy. I just feel like Haaland played in a team that looked better, that looked like they were connected and joined together, like they had a plan. Liverpool really struggled. Haaland had looked better against a better team than West Ham, are better than Fulham. Just thought they were superb. They looked like they were ready to go. They looked sharp. They looked on it. They shut the game out. They defended brilliantly. They kept getting the ball back well. Liverpool didn't look like that. So on that basis, I feel like I am very happy to go for Haaland. And although I think it's a close call, for me personally, I'm not really giving it too much consideration except from Haaland. So I would say, looking ahead to Game Week 2, looking at that fixture list, I think Haaland is absolutely the standout. I think Salah is absolutely the second choice. And then after that, you've got the likes of, I would say in the same bracket, I would say Nunez, because he'll probably play, KDB, Son and Kane. I would say those are the next ones down, but that's my attitude. I think Arsenal against Leicester, I actually think Gabriel Jesus is a decent option. I'd put him in that same category with the Son, Kane, Nunez, KDB. I think if you wanted to go differential. But at this stage of the season, to be honest, unless you really had a strong feeling, I would say, why would you bother? Bailey says apparently that's not true. Jesus only has 146 transfers out. That's good to know. Right, we're getting through these questions now, so that is good. Isaac Church, evening Isaac, hope you're doing well. Oh, it's getting late, isn't it? We won't go for too much longer now. Bit of a different one. Got 6 million to work with for a midfielder and already have Martinelli. Think Harrison could be a good shout. Yeah, when I touched on Leeds earlier, you might have missed that. I mentioned Aronson and I mentioned Rodrigo. I would personally go for Rodrigo over Harrison. Let's have a look. 6 million mid. So, first of all, I'd be interested to know if you're still in the chat, Isaac. Like, who are you selling? Because if it's for Bailey or Neto, I personally just wouldn't do it. 6 million mids. I mean, we're searching by points here. I think I know that Hindu Monkey's on Joe Linton and bigging him up. I wouldn't go there personally. Sorry, mate. Rodrigo, I think, would be the standout for me. Hwang's playing up front for Wolves at the moment. They're buying Gonzalo Guedes, so I don't know whether he'll stay. But Hwang I'd consider, but I just think it's a bit of a waste of a transfer on an unpredictable player. Almiron looked decent at 5 million, but again, he's not someone who I feel excited about unless you want to free up the cash to do something elsewhere. Let's have a look at anyone else. I just feel like this is a bit of there's a real lack of options at this price level. If you don't have Andreas Pereira, I would be strongly considering just going for Andreas Pereira as your set and forget 4.5 bench fodder who you're happy to play. Neto at 5.5. If you don't have him, I'd be happy to buy him. Not delighted, but fine. To be honest, it's just a bit of a poor bunch, isn't it? I think you're picking at a low price point. You've got to set your expectations accordingly. Solomon at 5 again. Not a great fixture run. I think I'd just go for Pereira right now. You've got to set your expectations accordingly. It's a bad price point. I'd just go down to 4.5, or if you want to take a punt, I go for Rodrigo at 6. Would be my take on that. I had a mare with my first team. I wildcarded. Oh no! Gutted, mate. So I feel like Harrison is more nailed than Rodrigo. I'm not sure. So Rodrigo had a fantastic pre-season and scored a lot of goals. They need goal-scoring midfielders. I know Harrison can score too, but I think they need the likes of Rodrigo. He might get rotated. Like I say, if you haven't got Pereira, I would just go for that and just free up your cash so you can use on other places. Yeah. Let's see what else we've got. I'm going to set up my team for next week in a minute. I'm going to talk a little bit about my bus team for next week and my plans, and whether I'm going to roll a transfer or not. Copy, drop your Twitter handle in the comments and I'll follow you, and then you can DM me. Nice one. Jorginho is Bailey suggesting. Jorginho's just one of those players who I can't get on board with in FPL. Like, he gets rotated a bit. You know, Kante could play, Gallagher could play, Kovacic when he's fit could play. I know he's on pens. I know his fixtures are okay. I just can't get excited about him. I just don't think you're ever going to get a lot from him. Yeah, that's my personal take. Caden, I will give your team a quick look. I mean, that looks, to be honest, your team looks good. Can't complain about that whatsoever. It looks really strong. Like that a lot. Yeah. So looking ahead, for those of you that don't know, I am basically streaming every minute I'm on the FPL website this season. I am streaming. So for me, there's no mindless browsing at this time of night, which is what I always used to do a lot of. There's no fiddling about. There's no tinkering. There's no whatever. This is my chance to look. So I haven't set my bus team yet for next week. So like I said before, Sanchez I'm now seeing very much as my first choice keeper. I probably will put Ward in for 3, but basically it'll be Sanchez number 1 with Ward perma stuck to the bench. I do have a bit of a benching headache this week. And for me, just to illustrate it, I'm not actually going to do this, but it's between, out of these 3 options down here, Trippier, I don't think you can see my cursor actually, I need to change that. Trippier, Brighton away, Neto, Fulham at home, and Bailey, Everton at home. For me, I'm going to start 2 of those 3. I'm unsure on which 2 of those 3. If you guys want to let me know in the chat, who do you think I should bench out of Trippier, Neto and Bailey? I think, I was going to say, before I look at the chat, I'm going to try and get my head together on which one I think, because I don't want to be too influenced. I'll talk out loud what my process is. So I think basically, in terms of my team, Man City, Liverpool, they're top assets. They've got good home fixtures. They're definitely playing. Salah definitely playing. Martinelli definitely playing. Again, I think it's a great attacking fixture for them. I think Salah at home is a no-brainer. Obviously, you're never going to bench him. Haaland, never going to bench him. So those players are absolutely nailed in my team. And then there's 2 spots left for Trippier, Neto and Bailey. So I'm just going to talk through out loud my thinking. So Trippier, Brighton are a solid team. They won't give up a lot of goals, but they prioritise solidity over attacking. So there is the prospect. I wouldn't be shocked if that game finished 0-0. It finished 1-0 to Newcastle, 1-0 to Brighton. I don't see that being a high-scoring game at all. So Trippier could be on for a clean sheet. He's also always got set pieces up his sleeve, which is nice little fallback. Brighton aren't fantastic at home either. So like Trippier, that's the merits of Trippier. Neto is playing at home game, which I always like a home game, obviously. He's playing against Fulham, who, okay, they got a really good result against Liverpool. I don't rate them. As I said before, their defence, I think, is pretty shambolic. He'll be up against Kenny Tete at right back. I don't think he's a great defender. They have their options at centre back are Tosin, who's okay, but then they've got Ream and Duffy, who I think are average at best. And having said that, he's playing for a team that's not that attacking. Didn't play that well against Leeds, although lots of energy and yeah, but he's talismanic for them, and they need him to perform. And then finally Bailey. They're playing Everton. I think Everton are again, a shocking team. They've lost Ben Godfrey to injury, which is very sad because he looked like a really bad one. So, yeah, best wishes obviously to him. Yerry Mina also could be injured. They're going to have a makeshift defence. I think the thing for me with Bailey is I am 90% sure he's going to play, but I'm 100% sure those two are going to play. And I think for that reason, I'm slightly edging towards starting Trippier and Neto and benching Bailey. But it just feels... I like having a benching headache. Benching headaches are good because it means I've got good options to choose from. But I'm slightly leaning towards benching Bailey right now. I think that's where I'm at. I'm going to check the chat now and see what people are saying. Caden Lambie saying bench Bailey. Isaac Church saying bench Bailey, getting a really bad vibe off Villa. I agree, bad vibe. You do not want to be losing at Bournemouth. I think that's shocking. Spartans is saying don't play Neto. Interesting. Don't play Neto. Wolves are a poor attacking team. Bailey plays Everton. Trippier useful. And Bailey saying got to be Neto and Bailey over Trippier. Brighton are no mugs. Brighton are no mugs, but I also feel like, look at today. They scored 2 against Man United. I know that's impressive in some ways, but Pascal Gross scored 2 goals. They overloaded them by the sounds of it, and I think Newcastle, Howe won't set Newcastle up that they can be overloaded. Brighton pick on teams' weaknesses, and Newcastle, Eddie Howe, like I say, I feel like they're like twins battling against each other, Potter and Howe. They're very clever, they're very shrewd, and I think they could cancel each other out. So Trippier, I don't know, I was going to say Trippier is the one who I feel like is my number 1 pick out of the 3 of them, I think. Bailey saying, no way you benching Bailey. Is this because you're called FBL Bailey? You're just biased towards him. No way you're benching Bailey versus Everton. If you're benching him versus Everton, then when would you play him? Well, that's a good question. I played him this week, and he did nothing. But the thing for me is, with Bailey, when I picked up my team, I basically sort of picked it as Archer and Andreas Pereira as my... in terms of my outfield players, they're my 13th and 14th outfield players. Andreas my 13th, Archer my 14th. I will rarely consider putting them in the starting lineup. So let's get back into the right bench order here. In fact, let's put Bailey first up because I think that's the way I'm leaning at the moment, is that as my starting lineup. The thing is, so I deliberately picked 12 strong players who I'm happy to start. It does create benching headaches, but like I said, I don't mind that. Most weeks, someone's going to have a fixture where I feel like I don't fancy it. I think Trippier, if Newcastle keep a clean sheet, he can get bonus. Like I say, he's got set pieces. I think he's got more routes to points than Bailey. Bailey could play 60 minutes and disappear. And I don't think he's a bad start against Everton. I really don't. But out of Neto, Bailey, Trippier, I think Neto's a more important player to Wolves. I think he's the main man. I don't think Bailey's the main man at Villa. I think what I'm going to do is Monday night. Sunday night is Sunday night. Oh dear. I'm going to stick with this for now as my bus team. I'm going to make Haaland my captain. And I'm going to set Salah as my vice captain. And I'm going to go with that for now. I'm happy to leave it as that. But I could reassess it later in the week if anything new comes to light. Comments in press conferences. Someone gets injured. Picks up a knock. I feel like that is my thing. And it's not that I'm not happy to play Bailey. I would be happy to play him. And it's not, saying when would I play him. It's that thing of like, I want to pick players in my team who are a struggle to leave on the bench. Because let's say this Bailey is like Romeo Lavia at Southampton. 4.5 midfielder, probably nailed to play most games. I don't ever want to put him in the team. Even Andreas Pereira, I'm not excited about putting in the team. I'd much rather have that Bailey slot where it's like, right, I can play him if I need to, if someone's unexpectedly missing out. So that's my logic there. Not that he's a bad pick, I just think that these two, Trippier and Neto, slightly edge it for me. Cameron saying, I don't think Gerrard has got his players sussed yet, or perhaps ever will. He spoke about Rodgers' first sack, but Gerrard up there too. Interestingly, I've got to say, I'm not sold on Gerrard. I'm really not sold. I had a chat with a few people the other day on Twitter about Gerrard and Lampard. I feel like definitely Lampard's trading on his reputation as a player. Gerrard did a great job at Rangers, but he has not impressed me at Villa really, other than the first few games. And I don't think he's going to be sacked first, personally. But I do feel like, again, things aren't right there. And I think they need to turn things around quickly. But when you look at their fixture run, they've got Everton and Crystal Palace, and they've got West Ham at home. They need to have things turned around, because then Arsenal, Man City, I think Leicester away, that's not right, that being a 4, but they really do need to turn it around the next. Well, they need to win this Everton game. Palace away is not easy. West Ham at home is not easy, and then he could come under pressure quickly, to be fair. But we'll see what happens with them. Isaac says Bailey could drop out. I don't think he will. I think he played well enough in the last game that I don't think he will, but he could. And like I say, that is the thing that tips me towards benching him. You said Everton not as poor as defensively as you think. Yeah, Cody and Ghana Gay set to join this week. Yep, 2 good signings. They've also got that guy Onana, who they're signing from Lille, who's a midfielder. So all of those could come into the team and really stiffen them up. Cody's a fantastic signing if they get him. I mean, what a great sign for a side battling against relegation. A real organiser, real leader. Great signing. Caden, game week 5, are you going to change Haaland to Kane as each team plays twice and Kane's almost guaranteed to start both? I'll be honest with you, Caden. I have not thought that far ahead. I think right now, I look at the fixture run that he's got, and I'm happy just to say, I've got him. I want him for the next 3, and I'll figure out game week 5 when I get there. Who knows what we'll be at by then. Sounds like a good week to roll a transfer beforehand. It is a factor if you're thinking of selling Kane, but for me, it's as simple as, like I could often say, like FPL is a simple game. It's as simple as, he's got a great little run of fixtures. He's got Bournemouth at home next. I want him in my team for that. And that's what I'm going to worry about, is what's in front of me right now. For Sky, like a game which I love and I do quite well at, generally, that's a lot of planning, a lot of thinking forwards. I think in FPL, we benefit well from being aware of what's coming down the line, but try not to plan too much and being a bit more reactive. I think the game allows us that. Cameron saying, Trippier has to play for you. I think he's a player with any game potential, i.e. can ping a 30-yarder versus anyone. Question is just Bailey, Neto for your team. Yeah, I think that is probably my mindset too, that I think Trippier is a better option than those two in general as a fantasy asset. I think he'll end the season with more points than Neto and Bailey, basically. So, yeah, I agree, Cameron. Spartans, is the price swaying you? Bailey is cheaper than Neto, hence you benched the former. For what it's worth, Villa were poor at the weekend, but Bailey was their best player. Most Wolves fans say Podence is their main man. Yeah. Oh, well, I think maybe he was their main man at the weekend, but I think in general, I think they would say Neto's more important. I don't think there's any way they're going to... Nice bit of doubt in my mind there. I don't think there's any way they're going to bench Neto. I know that Bailey played well at the weekend, even though Villa were very poor. I think it's not down to price I'm doing it. I just think the fixture, Fulham and Everton, that's a pretty even fixture. It is a really close call. I'm not going to agonise on it too much, to be honest. I think it's close to 50-50. And for now, I'm going to stick with that. It's not down to price. It's more down to nailedness. I think Neto's more likely to play. And I think that's it. I think Neto's 95, Bailey's 85-90. So that's where I'm at. There is a chance, potentially, I guess, that Gerrard could switch it up. I think he benched Watkins and played Ings. I wonder if he'd go 2 up top. That could cost Bailey if he feels like he really needs to shake it up. I guess we'll see on that one. Play the guy with the highest ceiling, so Trippier deserves to be benched, says Bailey. I actually think Trippier has got Trippier's the sort of player who I feel like I would never be shocked if he got the 15-pointer of the goal, clean sheet, 3 bonus points. I think he's that sort of defender. It may well not be against Brighton, but I think Trippier is the one that I feel set on more than the other two, personally. So I'm going to put that one to bed now. That's where I'm at. We've got a whole week to decide. I'm leaning that way. I do like, the way I like to play in general, though, is to have a relatively strong idea on what I'm doing with my team on Sunday night or at the end of the game week, so that I can't be too swayed by other things. I'm actually not listening to very much content at all this season, apart from a bit of Sky content. So that's actually quite interesting as well, because I don't think I'll be swayed too much, maybe apart from by you guys. But I like to be fairly clear, and I think basically looking at this, what I feel has emerged in my mind as a fairly clear thing is that I've got basically 10 slots in my team that I feel comfortable with, and then I think it's Neto or Bailey that I'm a bit 50-50 on, and I'm quite happy to be persuaded either way. And I'm sure there'll be lots of chat on Twitter about Neto v Bailey. I'll be looking for that content. But I'd suggest you do the same with your team. Have a good idea at this stage of the week. What do you want to do with it? What do you think the move is? And go with that. Yeah, exactly, Bailey. Plenty of time to think about it, plus something might happen midweek which resolves it for you. Guys, if you're in the chat, just to say, and I don't follow you, do drop me in the comment your handle, and it'd be great to follow you, so that we can connect on Twitter as well. I'm going to roll my transfer. I'm just going to have a quick... I'm nearly done now. I will happily answer. If there are any more questions, I will happily answer them. But I'm just going to have a quick little play just to see what I could be looking at as my moves going forward. I mean, like I said, I'm happy with Haaland. Reece James was the one I really wanted. And I think with Trippier's fixture runs, I think it would be for one of the Liverpool boys or for Diaz. Obviously, if I went in James in for Diaz... let's see. So if I went James in for Diaz, there's no change in price points. It still gives me $1 million to play with flexibly. I could upgrade Neto to a 6.5. I could upgrade Bailey to a 6. I could. There's various things I could do there. Easy one transfer move, that one. The other thing I could look at doing, depending on how Liverpool performing, I could potentially look at selling someone like a Robertson or a Trent. If I went for a Robertson out, this is what I'd just like to have a little play with my team. Basically, at the end of each game, we can just see like, okay, which players do I want in most of all, and which players are most vulnerable. And I think James is probably pretty high up my list of players I want the most. Arguably Foden as well. So looking at these the price points that I've got here, I've got $2 million in the bank by going Robbo to James. This wouldn't be this week; it would be the week after. And again, if we look at Man City's fixtures, they've got a nice run. That Newcastle away one's a tricky one. What would be an interesting triple move would be to free up funds by going from... I would rather have Trent than Robbo is the only thing, but let's just have a little play just to see what can be done. So if I went from James, and if I turn Neto into one of those 8 million mids that I was talking about, let's just put... It would be Foden, I think, but let's say it's Kulusevski anyway, if Spurs is a good run. I could look at Trent down to James and then Kulusevski in. I could also look at something like a Robbo to James and a Diaz into someone like a Zinchenko, for instance. Again, there's just a good price point in that 5 million. He's got a nice little run for an attacking defender, I would say. And again, I've got 0.5 in the bank for any price changes. That's Diaz, Robbo, Neto to Kulusevski, Zinchenko, James. It could also be Bailey, depending on how prices go. I think that's an interesting thing. That's something that I could maybe work towards potentially. So that's something to play with. Caden saying, "Are you a Southampton fan?" Yes, I am. And if so, how's Aribo doing? Well, they had a difficult game against Spurs. I think they're not a top 12 team. They're a team that's going to be battling. Aribo, all I saw was match of the day. Aribo had one really good chance. He made a great effort against Lloris, and Lloris made a really good save. So from an FPL perspective, could definitely easily have scored. From what I've read all round, the team played poorly. He didn't stand out as particularly good, nor was he particularly bad. That's what I've read. So, yeah. Between Trippier, who faced Brighton away, and Pereira, who faced Wolves, between them, who can I bench only for this game week? That's Mohammed saying that. I would personally definitely play Trippier over Pereira this week. I think Wolves are a solid defensive team-ish, and Pereira's... we're yet to really see what Fulham are going to be like despite one good game. So personally, I would play Trippier over Pereira, and I am doing that. AD, 2 up front doesn't work for Villa, which is a problem. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the strikers is sold. Maybe. I think they need those strikers, in my opinion, though. Although if Cameron Archer could come through, maybe they could get rid of one. But yeah, Watkins can also play out wide. Is a possibility. But yeah, it doesn't feel like the balance of that team is right, or has been right since they sold Grealish, really. And then Mohammed asked the same question again, but with 2 trophies afterwards. So, you asked it again with 2 fires as well, Mohammed. I mean, I do come to the questions. It's just one thing at a time, you know. Christopher Brennan, evening, Christopher. Thanks, Mohammed. Nice one, mate. Christopher, Bailey to 4.5 and Archer to Mitro. I could do that. The reason I'm not mad on Bailey to 4.5 and Archer to Mitro is... can I afford it? I can't quite afford it, one thing. But even if I could afford it, the reason that I'm not mad about it is because I'm quite happy with this slot here as an extra sub. And I don't... I feel like I'll be using 2 transfers to get to Mitrovic, and I just don't think he's that important a target. Fulham have got, like I say, a slightly, from my perspective, a sticky run of fixtures for an attacking player. So I wouldn't be looking to bring Mitro in now despite a good game week 1. So that's not something that I would do. You don't want to be using 2 transfers to get to Mitrovic. If you're going to do 2 transfers, you really want to get to 1 asset you really want, or 2 good solid assets, is my opinion. Nice one, Isaac. I'll be following you on Twitter. And then, where is Mara? So Southampton's new signing from Bordeaux striker. He was on the bench, I think. I don't know if he came on. Definitely not one for now for FPL, in my opinion, Bailey. Caden, Almiron or Romero, Spurs. Assuming that's to start. So Almiron at Brighton or Romero at Chelsea. I think I would go for Almiron. Ooh, it's another really close call. I think I would go for Almiron. Maybe I'm overrating Newcastle. I just think they are a good team. I do think it'll be a low-scoring game. Oh, I don't know, actually. It's a coin toss. Sometimes I think in fantasy it's 50-50. I struggle to think... I was going to say I struggle to think that Chelsea won't score against Spurs. Potentially, maybe they can keep them out, actually, Spurs. But my guess would be that Spurs concede. And on that basis, I would say Almiron. Again, that's just how I like to work. If I think a team's probably going to keep a clean sheet, someone like Romero doesn't have much attacking threat. If I think a team's probably not going to keep a clean sheet, rather, I'll play an attacking asset who may get a return. But I think that's a close to 50-50 call, personally. Yeah. Almiron all day, says Bailey. Yeah, I think it's very close, personally, 50-50. If Almiron, if you were saying someone who's a bit more attacking, like Wilson's too good, isn't he, for it to be a tricky one, but Tielemans, say, who's a bit more of a proven asset, or I know he's not more attacking, but or Neto. Let's say Neto. Like I would say Neto over Romero all the way, but yeah, okay. I mean, I agree. I don't know if we'll score. I mean, yeah, that would be my personal take on it. Right, I'm gonna sign off, I think. There's one last request. If anyone's got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Oh, people ask some questions on Twitter. I better just quickly answer those. Let's see what's going on here. Bookmark for the morning. Yes, Tom's FPL. Don't know what that is. Yes, Lucy, I will message you and reply. I do have Haaland in my team, and I will unpin that. There was another couple of questions. Kane to Haaland, we talked about that. Copy, that's you. Great, followed. I've answered that one. Darren, who was in the chat earlier, Villa players in particular, were they a failed pick? I answered that already. Spartans role of transfer, I've answered that. And I've answered that from Trackstar G. All questions answered. Let's see if there's any more in the chat before we sign off. Thoughts on Nunez this year, having Wildcard, he got the luxury of potentially restructuring. So Isaac, I talked about that right at the start of the stream when I talked about the Liverpool match. If you go back to that little section of the stream, then go to that. And I think, basically, in very brief, I want to see him in the team more often before I consider him. That said, I think he's good. And I wouldn't put you off buying him either. But personally, I want to wait and see. Mohammed's saying this season of parking the bus at the back because of most of the bonus points given to defenders. It's good 5 at the back. I got 88 points. Well done, Mohammed. That's impressive. Not only, the thing is it's one thing for defenders to be getting points. You pick the right ones. So, well done. I've been on 5 at the back for the last few seasons, and I think it's the way to play FPL because I think there's just such good value in those players. Right, that's what we've got. I've had a little play looking at plans going forward. I've set my bus team for the week. I just make sure that is good to go so I can not have to come back to it. I might stream later in the week, possibly on Thursday night, possibly on Friday night. We'll see how it goes. To lock in my team, but a massive thank you to everyone who's been in the chat. It's been lovely to interact with you all, and lovely to chat. Good to answer your questions. Good for you to appreciate all the help you gave me as well in thinking through my options. And this is where I'm at now for the rest of the week. I'm now, Cameron's saying I'm very zen. I try to be relaxed about FPL. I enjoy FPL. It's for fun that I play it, and I try to keep it chilled. So plan for the rest of the week now is just not overthink it. The only thing I really need to know about, and in terms of content and taking anything in, is Neto versus Bailey. That's the only thing I need. So my aim will be to tune out as much of the other noise as possible and see if I can find anything on Neto versus Bailey. And then we'll go from there. Oh yeah, Spartan says hit the like button. So if you are watching now, please do hit the like button. You're very welcome to subscribe if you've enjoyed it. And yeah, on Friday it'll probably be Thursday or Friday will be a much shorter stream. I think it'll be more like any last minute changes from press conferences, and I'll be answering any questions. So thanks everyone. Wishing you an excellent week. Hope everything is good for you, and when it's not good, I hope you're able to deal with it and ride it out, and sending you lots of love, and see you later in the week. Cheers, bye. And I always do this at the end of the stream where I say cheers, bye, and then I have to find out how to do it quickly. I need to find a more efficient way to do that. So I'm going to very slowly make my way to YouTube, and then once again I'll say cheers and good night.